Who asked about sculpting? Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? Nazine, did you? Somebody did. Somebody asked me about sculpting. You asked me about sculpting. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about today. Maya has some sculpting tools built into it. They also, Autodesk also has a separate product called Mudbox, which is specifically for sculpting objects in the machine. So depending on what you're trying to get done, one might be better for. And I think all the machines here have it. So if you want to play with that one separately, it's pretty cool. And it also functions a bit differently than sculpting does inside of Maya itself. Okay. So some of the just for a little background, some of these there are a couple other packages. There's Mudbox and there's one called ZBrush. I don't know, anybody familiar with ZBrush here? Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it's a great package that allows you to sculpt almost with a infinite amount of detail, because it's sort of doing some tricks, even though it almost looks like it's infinite detail. It's really not, but and that's what Mudbox tries to emulate. Whereas what we do inside Maya will be literally with actual polygons and points and everything like that. So there's no sort of virtual virtual trickery to make you think that you're seeing more detail than you are. That's what you need Mudbox and ZBrush for. But the tools are pretty good, and they're pretty handy depending on what you're trying to get done in right here in Maya. So if you're right out of the gate is that the tools support Wacom tablets. If everybody familiar with a Wacom tablet, that's the thing with the pen and all that. Yeah, she got one right there. They're not that expensive if you don't have one, and or some of them aren't that expensive. Sorry. No, sorry.
400.
Okay, that one's
$400. The cheapest one is 80.
Yeah, like the bamboo, they would have like a.
It's like 65 on Amazon.
There you go. $60, yeah. So they get cheap or they get expensive, or I think these monitors are actually like $4,000 or something like that. So a couple of these machines. What'd you say?
The new one's $3,000.
$3,000.
Wacom and tools.
So how could you just not get one? I mean, it's only 3 large. So they're really, it's neat. I've actually never played with one myself, but the point of these things, if you're not familiar with these, is that they allow. They're pressure sensitive, meaning if I press lightly, I get this. If I press down hard, I get a thicker line, just like in real life. Okay, so Maya supports this stuff, or these pens, both the bamboos and all your Wacoms or whatever. Basically, pressure sensitivity is supported in Maya. So if you buy one of the little things. Also, it's something that you can also find on Craigslist, because lots of times people buy those things and think they're going to become an artist, and then and then crap out. Well, it's true. I mean, it's like a treadmill. Never buy a new treadmill. Like people think they're going to get in shape, and they buy a treadmill, and the next thing you know, it's on Craigslist. So, anyways, it's something you can find really cheap on Craigslist if you're trying to keep it down. Or you were saying that one of the other classrooms has a Wacom on all of them, right?
Yeah, it's the Arctic room, the one with the flow trooper protecting the room.
Yeah.
Almost all of them are Cintiqs except 3.
There you go. So they all have this cool monitor where you can draw on it and everything. So anyways, the point being is that these features of being able to press light and press harder are inside Maya for what we're about to do. So it's important, or not important, but a nice thing to get if you don't have one already, and they're just cool anyways, and then you can sell yours on Craigslist in 6 months. Okay, so first thing is that Maya has its own So you know how we have workspaces up here in the top right, and we've largely been playing with either the Maya Classic, where you still have the animation stuff at the bottom. I've been staying in modeling standard because I don't need that right now, but it has a sculpting workspace, which puts just some of these tools up front for you. And a lot of these, what they call here the shape editor, this blend shapes. A lot of people use the sculpting tools to. Remember last week we talked about how you can do blend shapes, which is basically morphing, where you create copies of your objects in different poses, and that way you sort of just morph between the, you morph between them, and you animate that way. So they make mouth poses and emotions that way and things like that. So the thing that it puts right in front of you right here is the stuff about blend shape. So we won't be talking about that today. You'll probably learn that next semester, but that's what it puts up top here. The other thing it has in here that's kind of interesting is a content browser, and some of the things that it has are, where are the sculpting? Oh, no, sculpting. Okay, so it has some brushes in here for you can sort of stamp these down, and we'll get to how these work in a minute. But another thing that you can get is some basic shapes. So you can just click that, and you get a nice basic head in the workspace. Okay, and you can get a whole body, and there's cows, and where's the cow? There's a cow. And there's a raptor. There's all kinds of cool stuff in here. But you see, they're made nice and light, right? So depending on what you're, where you need to go with this, you can see that it's just an object made up of a lot of quads that you could, or four-sided polygons that you could then you could animate this in low resolution if you needed to, or you can start adding more detail. Okay. So anyway, so those are in there to get you started, which is pretty nice. The head is actually fairly dense for a first level, but it's not bad. So anyway, so right out, if you go out, you get sculpting. Let's see, sculpting stamps and base meshes. So, and then they're actually in here. There's a car. There's all kinds of stuff. So they're kind of cool. So. So I'm just going to grab this. Actually, I'm not going to grab this. So just to back way out. So what we're talking about here is the difference between low frequency detail and high frequency detail. And since the beginning, we've talked about how you're trying to make objects with as little detail as you need at the given time. Okay, meaning meaning that if you keep your polygon count down, making changes is a lot easier than when you start getting things dense. So we add levels of detail, and we sort of focus in on what we're trying to make here. Okay, so even this cylinder here is possibly a little dense for right now. So I'm going to go into my attribute editor and turn that down a little bit. I'm going to go back to 24. I'm going to put some height. Okay. So the idea is that when you make changes at this level, this is low frequency detail, meaning the changes I make bigger changes over the object. So if I'm trying to pull points or move things around, it's really easy at this stage because I have very little detail already in it, right? So when you look at objects, they all, on the whole, they have increasing levels of higher frequency detail. What I mean by that is if you look at, I have a coffee cup with a top in front of me here, right? So, the overall shape of the thing, is what you would call low frequency detail. This is just the shape, right? But it's got, the warning stuff and the recycle symbol and all that stuff stamped into it very, very, really fine, it's smushed in there, and it's really small, right? That's high frequency detail, meaning I would need a whole lot of polygons to try and make this show up, okay? You know, there's obviously, you know, I couldn't paint that in there because there, you know, this in theory would just be a flat circle on the top, okay? And just about any object that you look at is like that, you know? I mean, human faces are the same way. I mean, you know, by default, you know, if you back up 5 feet, it just, people just look like they have skin, but obviously the closer you get, they have pores and little dots and little doodads and little hairs and all that stuff. So what we're trying to do is try and find a way to get that high frequency detail in there when we need it. Now, you know, we started out talking about how, you know, depending on how your object is going to be needed, if it's across the room, obviously you're not going to sweat those things. But, you know, if you're in an animation, if the camera is going to go right past it, right on top of it, or right through it, or whatever, you know, you need to be able to have ways to add those things, okay? So there's lots of ways of going about this. I mean, you can, you know, you can, there's tricks in rendering that will sort of get around some of the stuff. And there's what they call displacement maps, which basically is a map to actually move the surface of the object at render time, which we'll get into later. But what we're talking about right now is literally just finding ways to move around the points and the polygons that you have up to a point where it's kind of becomes not worth it to have that much detail anymore. So if I come in here to my sculpting tools right here, okay, and I go back to my tool settings. Okay, you see, you'll get a whole, the best way to actually get at this, because lots of times you need to mess with the details of this, or the options. Where's my sculpting tools? There they are, sculpting tools. Okay, so this is just a dupe of what you see right here. You know, no big deal. So there's a bunch of them, and they all do a little bit different thing. But you know, a lot of them are really specialized, and you know probably won't play with them too much. You know, spray and foamy. You know, so sculpt tool is pretty much what you'll sort of jump into right when you get out of the, you know, right when you jump in here. Okay, and if I go to my object, oops, again the tool, okay. So I have my, you know, little whatever this was, yeah, and I go to sculpt on it. Okay, by default it hides some of the faces. You can show wireframe or not. So there's a very specialized right-click menu that you get when you're using the sculpt tools. Allow you to sort of do some things real quick. You know, like show your wireframe and hide it by just sort of essentially just going up. Okay, so because sometimes you know you're not going to want to see it because you're just literally trying to sculpt on it, and sometimes you're not. Okay, you can turn symmetry on and off. If you want to, you know, if you have something that's symmetrical, like a person's face, you can sculpt both sides at once by just doing one, and you'll see the effect on the other, and all that, you know, all that good stuff. What else you got here? Oh, see, I just turned it on there. Object Z, so off. Okay, so if I just go, usually these things are horribly scaled. So yeah, so here's my, if I go over my object, here's my brush. So if I click on this, it's gonna do almost nothing. There it goes. So it's just beating it around. So if you go in there and you're not getting anything out of it, look at your, this is the size of your brush will show up here in your tool settings. Okay. The easier way to shrink it is to hold down control, or sorry, yeah, control. Okay, this one's different. Hold on, this one's not doing what my machine did at home. Huh. At home, I held down. There it goes. So if you hold down Control and go to the sorry, hit your middle mouse button and go to the right and left. This will shrink and you know, increase the size of your brush. Okay, so it's kind of a virtual brush. So now if I start going, you know, doing my thing here, you'll see it starts sculpting the object, okay? So all it's doing is pulling the points along their, I think it's along their own normals at this stage. Yeah, so whatever their own normals are, whichever way they're pointing, is which way it's going to pull it. So you have two things here. Over to the side here, you have the size, which is what I was just messing with. That's right. Side to side gives me so Control, hold down your middle mouse button, and side to side will increase and decrease the size of your brush. Okay. It comes up when you go into the sculpting workspace. Yep. Okay, so the thing that's also usually really high, and it's all it's all depending on how big your object is. The head that I had in there was obviously taking up almost the entire my entire grid and everything. So it's a big object. So lots of times your size and your strength, the two things over here, are way high. So if you knock them down, you'll start getting sort of more subtle movements. Okay, really subtle movements, obviously. Okay, too subtle movements. There we go. All right, so I think you immediately see what a mess this is, or is sort of creating, and it's creating that because we obviously only have so much detail, so it's only going to pull around the points that are there, right? So if I'm starting with this low 288 polygon little canister, whatever it was, that's what I'm going to get. And I can smooth this, and I get this out of it, and that's great. But if you want things to actually, now I can't sculpt on this level. I'm still only, I can, but I'm only moving around the underlying points. The cage that we talked about before. Like here's my original, here's my subdivided one with 3 on my keyboard, right? So that's still available, but I can't sculpt those. The divisions that it's making at render time. Okay. Now, so if what the easiest way, or sort of the way to dump more information in there is to do the smooth command, and you can actually do it a couple of times, to actually get something to sort of work with. So, so what I did there is, I ran smooth. So now if I go to sculpt, I've got lots more points to work with, okay? Which means I can sort of get more done with it, You can do more subtle things with it. And you can keep doing that, but obviously you're making a denser and denser object that's more, harder to move around and whip around and do whatever you need to do with it, okay? So, let's see, I lost my train of thought. Hold on, let me get my notes. Okay. Okay. So, yeah.
What are the hotkeys in the sculpting? Like, are there hotkeys like push and pull the object, or like a part?
Yeah. There's pretty much only. I mean, there's really most tools have a sort of an alternate option. So the sculpt tool, being something that pulls geometry out away from itself. If you hit shift, it does the opposite. It pushes in. So you can hit, oh no, actually, sorry, it goes into smooth mode. Sorry about that. So basically it's smoothing things down, okay? So like if you don't like what you had, you can see that. So it's smoothing between the things. So it's like if you got something that's too jaggy or you don't like what you're getting, you can kick it back down by hitting that tool. Or hitting shift. It's alt when you sculpt that gives you the push in. So if I paint, I hold down control. Damn it! I hold down control and I paint. I get push in. If I just paint, I get pull out. And if I hit shift, I get smooth. So it's kind of 3 tools in one. It's a pull, it's a smooth, it's a push, and it's a smooth. Okay. So, what you might think, okay, that's great. That means that I can just take an object and start, or I could take a shape that's close and just start mushing it into place, and this really isn't the tool for that, because if I needed more detail up here, depending on what I was trying to make out of this, besides a blob of nothing, dumping more detail in here means dumping more detail everywhere, and like I said, creating a denser and denser and denser object, right? And also without shapes edges that flow in the direction of things that you're trying to make. If you want a diagonal line across this, see how crappy this looks? Like if you wanted to sculpt out whatever I'm trying to do here, okay, you would put a nice edge, through here and here and everything, and that would smooth down really nicely, okay? Instead you've got this thing where you're crossing. See where my sculpt is crossing my my polygons, okay? So it just, if you go online and you look at what people do when they try to just use these kind of tools outside of ZBrush, I should say, that it all looks mushy and shitty, because it's like, if you're trying to put nice creases in and sort of get things to really look real, you need to have lines that go, you need to have edges and lines that go where they're supposed to go. This isn't clay. You don't just start out and start sculpting and boom, you're not going to pull this out and just make a face out of it, and because you're going to end up with an object that's 5 million faces or something like that, and you won't be able to move it around, and it's just a waste, And there's ways around that, and there's also other kinds, but what we're talking, other kinds of sculpting, obviously, but what we're talking about here is moving polygons, and when, so when is it good and when is it when are these things useful and when are they not? Okay. So I'll just run you through some of the tools real quick. So the smooth tool is the one I was we just found by hitting shift while you're using the sculpt tool, and it does exactly what it says. It just, if you don't like what you're getting, it's just averaging the polygons over and over and over. It's almost like an eraser, so it backs things away. So the bigger your brush, like if I get a big ass brush, go like this, oops, and hold down Alt, sorry, oh. Shift, sorry. I'll end up back with a nice blob like I was looking for here. Okay. Okay, so smooth does the same thing, so it does what I just showed to you, but sometimes people are more comfortable, hitting the actual tool and not. Grab tool is really handy because it's sort of like, how we played in the in the modeling toolkit, we played with the soft selection, okay? Grab is kind of the same idea, except it, changing the size of the grab is really easy because, you can just go in here and, instead of having to go into the tool over here and change your soft selection size, you can just hold down Control and drag and hold down your middle mouse button and, choose your size, and then you just.
Andy, when you do that,
yeah.
Can you go up and down?
Yeah.
What does that do? That up and down line? So like when you do it, yeah, what's it doing there?
So that one's is strength.
Okay.
It's weird because sometimes it doesn't know if you mean to make it the size of the tool bigger, so that just changes tool size. And then if I go up, you notice my strength just changed. Right, yeah. So it's up. You see right there, I went up, but it still changed the tool size. So you have to go like perfectly up or it gets confused real fast. So I never use it that way. I always just try and keep the tool or the strength. See, I keep hitting it. There, I got it. It's hard to hit, so I usually just go to the right and then just change tool size and then tweak this by hand because it's a pain in the ass. Okay, so let me get my strength up here. So this one you actually do want your strength up higher. So you're doing exactly, you're grabbing whatever inside the radius here, the circle, and just moving it any way you like based on whatever view you like and however you want to move it. So it's almost like a magnet or something that's yanking these points around. And it, like I said, I think this one's really handy because you can just kind of rotate around. And like I said, if you wanted to, you know, like if you had a chunk where, you know, if I wanted to pull, you know, some of the smaller stuff back in line, I could do that. But also if I wanted to make a big change, I could get a big, big brush and pull the whole thing into place. Okay. So grab's a really, really handy one, I think, because it just helps you sort of, you know, make big global changes real quickly, like so. Okay. Pinch is kind of cool depending on what your geometry looks like. So, you know, right here, so this is what I was talking about crossing. So if I had, you know, a crease here, let me try the pen real quick and make sure it's doing its thing. Yeah, so it's see what so the pen is neat because I'm pressing real light up here, but I'm bringing it up and through there. So it's pretty neat. Whereas with your, you know, the mouse is obviously the same pressure all the time, so it's just a big, you know, straight down. Okay, so so the pinch tool will take anywhere you go. It's gonna essentially work like a almost like a magnet in itself, and that it's gonna pull, you know, pinch the points together. Okay, so if I click my pinch tool and go along here, it's trying to make a crease. Seems to be just mushing it. Let me reset the tool. Hold on. Whoop. Reset tool. There we go. Ooh, too big. See, that's the thing. When it comes up like that, that's why it just went nuts on me, because at 25 or 27, that's my brush. It's like this massive thing. So if you reset your tool and you wonder why it's not working, always assume your tool is super gigantic and it's just you're not looking at it. So this would be a good one to try and pinch. It's not really giving me a pinch. It's sort of gathering up these points here, but I don't know why it's pushing it downwards like this. Let me try the pen. Yeah, it's just like pushing them down.
The strength is really low.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
No, I mean the action is wrong. It's pinch, flat. Huh. Pictures of the world, symmetry off, invert, spacing. Well, that's weird. I'm not entirely sure. Well, try it yourself and see if you get anything out of it, because I am not getting what I expected out of it. What I'm supposed to get is a gathering up of polygons. Instead, it's like pushing them downwards for some reason. Huh. Yeah, that's not what I'm looking for. It's like melting. It's like I'm like grazing down the object or something. Well, okay. Well, anyways, play with it. I'll try. I'll play with it later and see why it's not doing its thing. The point is that the idea is that, you know, over here where this whatever you want to call it that I made, this ridge that I made with the sculpt tool, okay, when it follows the edges, it's going to pull those together nicely. When I'm crossing my edges, like over here, that's when it's going to look like crap, because you see these things, it's, you know, it's pulling where there isn't an edge, okay, and that's the thing that's going to make you have to smooth and smooth and smooth to get anything decent out of this, okay. Flatten will essentially just go in and try and make literally a flat face out of any piece that you like. So if you just keep going on it, I'm going to turn my strength up. See how my mouse is actually, I'm actually already starting to bog down a little bit, and this isn't even the most dense thing in the world. So see, it's just trying to do exactly what it says. It's just flattening. So if you need to flatten for some reason or another, there you go. It's in there. There you go. So that makes a nice flat chunk. You know, like if you needed to flatten this bottom to have it sit on something, you could go like that and get a reasonably flat bottom. There we go. Okay. Foamy, so these other ones here, like the foamy and wax and all that stuff, these are all tools that are basically sculpt, but they just sort of change on how they change the way that they act and the way they move the points around. So I'm gonna actually go in and I'm gonna smooth again. So now I have a super dense object. I'm at, well, not super dense. I have almost 80,000. No, I have 40,000 faces and 80,000 triangles. Okay, so now I have a lot of detail to kick around. So now, and this is the only time that you'll see a difference in how they function. Whereas, you know, the sculpt tool, you know, you choose down here sort of what you want your sort of your curve to look like. Okay, meaning like, you know, this is going to be a rather smooth. So if you look at this way, it's like where it's strongest, right in through here, it's going to be like this, and then as it tapers off, it sort of doesn't, and then it does quickly, and then it dies. So it's like if I go like this, you'll see that's pretty much what that is. You see that? Okay. So if you change you change the sort of nib out of this, so like now this will give me something a lot sharper because it goes like this. You'll see now I'm putting like a hard crease in it. You see now that matches. If I look at the profile, it matches that. Okay. It's still over. Okay, and there's a whole bunch of them. This is more of almost a linear one that'll give you a bit of a crease, but not so much. Okay, and whatever. This one just probably be square. Yeah, that's real lovely. So I don't know what the heck. I guess I have no idea what you'd use that for. But you can also make your own if you go in here, and you know if you find a need to do. I guess this would probably, like if I hit Shift, Alt. No, that's bad too. Yeah, that's no. I want the opposite. So, anyways, you can make anything you want. You can save your own custom curves. They have and they'll show up down here. So it's like if I made this one with a little ledge but pulled something else out, I save a custom curve. I get my own curve down there, and so if you really like what you're getting, then there you go. So, okay. Yeah, let's see, and then scrape. Scrape, I think, just takes a chunk. Let's see. Some of these you end up never. I mean, I don't use those. I don't use scrape. Fill, I think, will fix like a. Yeah, it's for like blowing up areas around other areas. You know, they're very specialized, but it's if you need it, you need it. A lot of people like to work with the wax tool. If you're a person who messes with sculpting or anything like that, you know, one of the ways that people build up clay models is, geez, yeah, let me turn that down. Oof, 0.2. Jesus. They put on, they add detail in sort of little strips, you know, like a lot of clay models you'll see are like, you know, they have just, this is the way they build up like, you know, muscles and stuff like that, is just more and more on top, you know, just keep sort of adding this sort of waxy buildup, and so this one's pretty familiar to some people. So they sort of get your use this to sort of bash thing into a basic shape, and then come back in and maybe smooth out edges that didn't turn out so well, or you know, things like that. So they're trying to get that basic shape together. Okay, as you back up, you know, and it's actually pretty cool to be able to use the pen right on the monitor. This is pretty sweet. I would play with one of these if you get a chance. It's pretty cool. Yeah, so that's wax buildup, and that just, you know, just like I said, it's essentially just putting pieces on top of pieces on top of pieces. And you know, it's very similar to the the basic sculpt tool. It's all doing the same thing. It's just pulling it along the same, just pulling points out, okay? Like so. The knife tool, I think that's more of a, that just basically cuts a weird channel, so I'm gonna turn it way down. Like usually for some reason these things, and this happens in ZBrush like crazy too, is when you start the tool, it's just way off. It's like, like it's doing that kind of crap, so it's like ZBrush, like I said, Mudbox functions the same way, and then you have to turn things down or it's like just super aggressive and just does too much. So if you are having problems with that, look for your look for those settings and turn them down, because they're probably crazy high. And let's see, there we go. So knife tool is essentially like more of a scrape. It's like putting a little channel in there. It's like this is, kind of looks like wrinkles or whatever. Okay. So see how much better it functions up here where I have more detail. Maybe the brush is still too big. Okay. Knife tool, smear tool. Smear, I think just, good lord. I don't know what that is. So it sort of, it smears, it smears things around. So it's not necessarily pulling. It's sort of like the grab tool, but it's not, it's sort of still on its same surface. So if you sort of needed to mush something into place, the smear tool would allow you to do that, okay? Bulge tool, that it bulges. See what I mean though? Like I clicked on it and it goes nuts because the buildup is at 50. If I turn it down, no, it's too low. And I go like this. Now that's a little more useful. Like if you were trying to make a muscle or something like that, this would be kind of useful because you could just go like that. Okay. All right. Amplify. Oh, geez, who knows? I don't know what amplify does. I don't care. Okay. So yeah, the main ones to remember, honestly, are your sculpt, your smooth, your grab. These are the one that you'll really end up using. Like foamy, makes. It's just the way that it moves the points. It's really all it's about. Like foamy, I'm assuming is doing some kind of. Oops, I'm on the wrong tool. More bubbly buildup, I'm assuming, or moving in the points. Okay, whatever. It's like I said, I've never used that, and I don't know anybody that ever has. So they're there if you ever get into a foamy situation or a pinchy situation or a, whatever. In a pinch, yeah. Sorry. That's all right. Okay, so some of the one of the other things to remember about the way these things work is that you have your choice, and this is actually pretty handy in that you can choose either what they mean by world size units and screen pixels. What that means is if you set a tool up as world, see I zoom out and the brush stays the same size, meaning like relative to the object, okay? Meaning no matter what I do, I'm only, so I'm gonna go back to sculpt and okay, I'm only gonna get that. If I go to screen pixels, it's doing exactly what it says, but you notice my brush doesn't change size, right? Some people really like to work this way because it allows you to make, big changes, like I can sculpt a big change here, or I can zoom in, notice my brush stayed the same size, and now I'm sculpting on a small level. Okay. So small, and then I zoom out. That's world screen units, world versus size units, world versus screen pixels. So it just depends on what you get comfortable with. If you play with this, I actually like screen pixels quite a bit because, like I said, you can do this and like it's especially good with grab. So I could move all this, okay. But then I could zoom in and just grab a little piece of it, without going over here and have to make a new or adjust my brush size and all that stuff. So, okay. So yeah. So that's really awesome. I like that. Okay. Yeah.
Is there like anything that this can do that ZBrush can't, or is this just like a simplified version? Or is there this over ZBrush?
No. I mean, well, I mean, first of all, ZBrush is crazy confusing. Like, it's really, really weird. Like, it's one of those programs where, like, how most programs you dump into, you kind of, they do a lot of the same things, or they function the same way, especially 3D programs. You're going to get presented with 4 views, and you're going to, you're going to go through a menuing system. ZBrush, for some reason, they were like, screw that, we're going to do what we want. Like, it's really confusing. So it's like, it's hard for people to, if you don't use ZBrush all day, using ZBrush is really tough. You know what I mean? Like getting back up to speed, because it doesn't work in a way that you would expect. That's why Mudbox, like a lot of people like Mudbox, because it does work the way you expect. So if you hop into Mudbox, you're like, okay, I get a lot of the same stuff. The tools look similar, but you're using a different sort of technology. So I think the only thing that this does differently than ZBrush, like to answer your question, is that it doesn't confuse the shit out of you. Yeah.
But I know we're going to be using ZBrush a lot more in the DAC program.
Yeah. It's cool, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's really super, super cool. It's just super confusing and odd to use, but it's really great. I mean, if you go on their site and you see, like everybody, basically anything that's made, with a ton of detail, people sculpt characters with it, like pretty much, exclusively in ZBrush. Mudbox is nice, but it doesn't really compete even with that, because it's just better, So yeah, you'll get to use it, and it's probably on these machines already. But so if you kick it open, you'll see, like, just out of the gate when it opens up. I mean, like, it's got this weird icon. It already starts confusing you just with the opening icon. Like, welcome to the bewildering world of ZBrush. This is what it should say, Set your faces for stunned. I mean, it's like, it is weird.
Amazing.
It's cool, but it's like, here's what you get, and like, I mean, it's great. I mean, it's cool, and it's great, but good God, is it weird? Like immediately right out of the box, like all the zooms that there it is, that are gone. Like, it doesn't function that way. And let's see, I think Space brings up my.
What program would you personally prefer using out of all the sculpting?
I mean, I'd probably find a way to deal with ZBrush again, because it is great. I mean, it's really super cool, and especially with one of these things, and it's neat. But it's like I said, it's a pain in the ass. Like I have a little video that I recorded myself just to remind myself how to use it if I ever go into it. Because if you don't use it for 3 months, you'll come in and you'll be like, what the heck, like. So
it's not like, I know I've used Adobe Illustrator and it has a similar Maya.
Right.
Kind of get the same
Exactly,
thing.
right. ZBrush does not play that way. Yeah, it's almost like a weird CAD program where you're like, what the heck? Like, it's friendly like a rabid raccoon. You know what I mean? It sucks. I mean, in that way. But what it does is awesome. But what it does is great. But it's a pain in the ass. So what I'm gonna so bring that back around. The beauty of having these tools in Maya is that they're in Maya. So they're available to you when you start to go to do. Depending on what you're trying to do, they're good tools for what you're trying to do. So what I wanted to show you, or sort of a good example of this, is for instance, organic objects. Like this is, we've talked a lot about rigid objects. We've talked a lot about rigid objects, obviously, but some people want to do more, organic objects. Like some people have made flowers and things like that, and so what I'm going to show you is a good example of sort of the workflow to use those things to do those kind of things. Some pretty bad English, but I think you know what I'm saying. Like I said, I'm sick, so just bear with me. Okay, so if I said that this is a petal, right? Okay, and you know it would smooth out to be like this. Okay, and I'll tell you what, let's do it on the floor. So, okay, so I'm making one petal. Okay, real simple. In fact, I think I'm even gonna turn down. Oops. I'm going to turn down the level of detail. That's how much I wouldn't mind. So I've got 3 sides, subdivision. Now I'll start out with 3. Okay, so I took this and I did a duplicate special, and I said I wanted not 99, but we'll say 10. Oop, 9 more, so I'll have 10. So I'm going to rotate in my y-axis 36 degrees. 36 degrees. I'm not going to translate it all. Scale 1, scale 1, scale 1. And I'm going to make instances. Oops. I did it around itself. Oop. I'm going to move. Sorry, I'm going to, oops. Hit D on my keyboard. Oop, not B. And I'm going to move my origin point to the middle. B. I'm going to go a little farther. D. Just so they're not meeting in the middle. D. Okay, close enough. So, okay, so, you know, I've got this really, you know, low res and not extruded, you know, single polygon petal, right? So if I come in here and they're all instances of each other, right? So I'm going to make changes across the board. You know, this is a great place to start, you know, pulling these into place. Okay, so I'm going to go to my Sculpt tool, and I'm going to go to the tool settings. Make sure I'm not. Yep, I got a gigantic brush again. Of course, I'm going to bring my brush down. I'm going to bring my strength down. Come up a little bit. It's all right. There it goes. Okay. Maybe a little more than that. Sculpt. Boom. Hold on. Oh, screen. Huh. It's not moving my object. Hold on a second. I'm having some technical difficulties here. Did I mention I was sick? Does that still hold any water? Is that anybody?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Huh.
I think something's going around. Everybody
Yeah.
on this floor is like getting sick.
Yeah, I know. Like it's some weird. Oops.
So if you sculpted something on ZBrush, does it save in a file compatible with Maya?
Yeah, I mean it can be exported, but it's you know, it's going to be really dense, and you actually don't. Okay, there I go. You don't get the same amount of information out of it that you'd there's things that you have to prep to sort of get it back over to Maya. Oh, I moved the wrong one. What the hell? Sorry, my instances are not behaving for some reason. So instance. There it goes. Jeez, what the hell? Okay, so anyway, so what I was trying to do right at the start there is, so I'm trying to make, you know, really big changes to you know, my whole flower right here. Okay, now you see, like, so I'm essentially sculpting, you know, all the petals at a real nice base level at once, you know, reasonably organically. So it's like, if I didn't like what I've got here, I could go over, I'm gonna get my tool thingy again, get my grab tool. Too big, of course, way too big. I'm gonna like fix so that they don't smash into each other. Okay, I'm gonna maybe pull the centers together. Okay, like so. Oh, what the hell? Who are you under here? Dick. There we go. For some reason I got extra copies, I think. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so so you see what I'm doing here. You know, I'm sort of, you know, knocking it into place nice and organically and reasonably quickly across the board. Well, when it behaves, there it goes, cheese. It hates that first one like crazy. Still too much. 0.25. Okay, boom, 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 boom. You know, so at this level, you know, I can get, and I might want to even smooth this. It's getting a little nuts there. So you see how it cleans them all up real quickly and gets you into place. Okay. Now remember, you're only going to be able to sculpt on whatever object you just selected. So, you know, these are instances of each other. So, you know, it's allowing me to, you know, I'm obviously making changes to all of them by making changes to one of them because they're instances of each other. Okay. So I'm working with, you know, non-thickened polygons here because if it already had thickness, not lots of times, but you run the risk of pulling points through other points. So it's just easier, honestly, to sort of work in 2 dimensions. Is an easy way to say it at this point, because you can just thicken it after the fact. You know, like this is a thin object, so there's no reason to risk. You know, if I used petals that were already thickened, I would get problems, and I'll show you what we'll do after the fact. There it is. Okay. So we'll go to the middle. So you know, you can make a middle or whatever you want to call that center section. Okay. So you know, this is all well and good, but you know, it's perfect because they're perfect clones of each other, and you know, and that's just too perfect. You know, so you know so from here, you know, if you got into a basic shape that you liked, you know, and you want to move forward, this looks like propeller sort of, but you just grab them all and you would combine them, you know. So now I've got a singular mesh, okay, and this is now where you could start making changes that make it much more organic. You know, some petals are going to be just a little bit bigger than others, and you know, one might kind of drop down a little more or whatever. So you know, you could just, now since they're all together, you know, now they're not going to affect each other. So I can move this one just a little, move that one up just a bit, move this, you know, just basically go in here and screw things up just a tiny amount, you know, so that it's just not perfect, you know, because nothing's perfect, you know. So you just can, this is why I like the grab tool, because it just, you real quickly can go in and do this sort of stuff, you know. Okay. And then I'm in a world unit, so like this. Maybe even take a whole side of it and move it up like so. You know, whatever. I think you get the idea, is that, you know, it looks like a flower. Maybe move the center a little bit there. Okay. But if you look at it, you know, you've got a little twist, a little this going on here, a little, you know, this one's a little odd, whatever it might be. It's just adding that extra level of just slight variation that makes something, you know, a little bit more realistic. Okay. And that's where something like this is really handy, you know. So like I said, you know, from here it looks like a regular flower, or, I mean, and then you come in, but And there's just a little something going on there, okay? Okay, and then from here, if you really wanted to get nuts, you could go in and smooth a level. I probably actually should have did this at the other level because, if I wanted to put sort of those creases in the middle here, I'm gonna need a decent amount of detail to do that, but this isn't so bad, like those sort of way it goes in here, maybe 1, 2, just definitely would work better with a Wacom, but you get the idea. You know how they kind of have, so like so, okay. So it's just a nice assist. So essentially, I've made my petals here, but I've added a level of organicness that I can, if organicness is a word, I'm not sure, but then I could just go in here. I can do a quick extrude, 0.2, just 0.02. Keep faces together, 1 division, and boom. Like so. And now I have, 3-dimensional petals. I got an underside instead of just black, and I have a top side, and like I said, it's just a bit more organic than a normal arrayed out or duplicated across the board flower. Okay. Another example I had was, okay, so if I put this over to the side, whoop. Good example too is just other things that are sort of organic, like like cloth and things like that. Now, there are cloth simulators to help you out with that kind of stuff and everything, but just from a basic, level, I'll show you. I'm gonna make sort of a bag, okay? So I'm gonna grab just a cube. Start out with a cube in this instance, and I'm gonna chop the top off because it's gonna be a bag with a inside or whatever. Okay, well, oop. See this? You gotta look out for that stuff. Okay, and if I smooth it, I'm gonna get a trash can instead or whatever. But what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna show you sort of just walking through levels of detail and what you can get out of that. Okay, so if I go here. And it's a little, keep the top open. Ah, shit. Hold on. This is where you get burned by the, yoo-hoo. Oh. Camera base. Oh no, I just missed. Never mind. I missed. Okay. Boom. Bring that in a little bit. Bring this up a little bit. Okay, so we'll call this like a, sort of a leather style purse kind of bag. Okay, so I'm just going to get it into a basic shape. This is actually a good place for a shear that we talked about on Monday, where I'm trying to pinch up the top, but keep the base wider, but I don't feel like going in there to get it, so I'm just going to do it this way. And we're working at such a light level that or sort of such a base level that obviously making it close to that shape is really quick and easy, so I wouldn't bother with it. So okay, so like I said, if I come in here and I look at what I get when I put my subdivisions on, I have this shape, this way too perfect, way too clean shape. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding in some of the some extra lines to give me something to some edge loops to give me something to start making the pieces of it. Okay, so I'm going to put edges in here so that I can make the sort of the where it's all sewn together here at the bottom. I'm going to make this so this bulges out a little bit. I'm going to hold my bottom part a little more. I'm actually going to put a little more here, a little more there. Maybe another one at the top, maybe another one here. Okay, so okay, so from there I'm gonna I'm gonna dump out and I'm gonna make a duplicate just in case I mess this next one up. I have my original that I started with. So anytime, you know, I'm gonna go to a next level, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put on a smooth. Now remember, you know, the smooth is the one that actually divides the polygons permanently. Okay, you know, the thing that we're doing here is sort of an illusion. It's temporary. You know, your actual object is still only, you know, 182 faces. When I mash this, you know, it's gonna quadruple that twice, so it's gonna a factor of 2, right? So I'll just do 1, boom. So now I've got that. So that is without my smoothing on. Okay, so I got a lot of stuff to work with here. Okay, so I'm just gonna do it once, and then start sculpting it into place. Get rid of some of these. And I'll show you what I mean. So, you know, anything that's going to happen across the board, you want to do it at either this level or the level below. Like if I wanted to start moving, you know, like I'm going to go in and I'm going to take some of these edges. Oops, not that one. Now I'm going to grab, not the whole thing. Oh, for God's sakes. There it goes. So I'm gonna just inset this piece just a little bit. I'm gonna move this one. So now, like I said, I'm starting to put the what's. That's not a good one. Boom, boom. I'm grabbing where the seam is, you know, where the leather gets sewn together in the middle or at the edges. Okay, I'll do it on the other side. Boom, boom, boom. 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 Okay. This one. This one. This one. And that one. Okay. Okay, so once again, you know, I've got my shape. That's all great, but once it's too, you know, it's really perfect. You know, it's very smooth. It's very, you know, regular. Looks fake, right? So if you come in here and you start sculpting, oops, pick my mesh. I grab bring my brush out, bring my influence way down. Okay, you can start, you know, bulging the sides, maybe a little too little. Bulging the sides out, you know. Okay. Maybe even just messing up these edges, you know, a little bit, you know. So, like, pulling those so that they come out a little bit, and maybe I like grab, like I was saying, is like maybe I'll just grab one of these edges and make it so it's not perfect, you know. Start pulling this out. Okay, now, you know, so the point here is that I'm still, you know, I smoothed once, and now I'm still, you know, I'm making like not lots of nice global, you know, really big changes because I don't have a ton of polygons yet, right? So this is, you know, sort of what you could call medium frequency, meaning like, you know, I'm making bigger changes, but it's not, you know, I'm not down here where I just have this really, really simple object. I have a sort of a medium simplicity object. So I'm making things like, you know, things that are inside the bag, you know, that are sort of deforming out the side here or something. Okay, that's a little much. So kick that back or smooth that down like so. Okay. Maybe just come way out and maybe just make it non-symmetrical, you know, just push in one of the corners a little bit. So, you know, you're just like the flower, I'm just adding, you know, just light changes that, you know, even though the thing looks like a, you know, just looks like a regular bag, and it is, it's just those little cues that make it not so perfect, you start to put them in there, you know. Okay, so once I'm happy with where I'm at, and I'm not quite. Actually want to push these edges in a little more, so I'm going to decrease the strength of my brush a little bit with control. There we go. Control and middle mouse button, and I'm going to. I'm in grab. Sorry. So I'm going to sculpt. And I'm going to. So I'm hitting Alt while I'm sculpting. So I'm kind of trying to push in some of these areas where things start to gather up like that. Okay. Do the same on the other side. So, you know, this is here it's nice to not have symmetry on, because I don't want it to be perfectly symmetrical. I want to do that by hand so that it has that organic stuff going on. So there we go. Okay. Okay. There, so now it's sort of smushed at the top. Make it bigger yet. I'm gonna even smush this up just a little bit. Okay, I think you see how it, see what I'm getting at. It's starting to maybe a little too organic, but you know, you can always back that stuff off. You know, I can grab and sort of, like, I don't like the way this is a little much, and but other than that, we're kind of getting there. You know, I've got this happening, but I got something similar happening on the other side, but it's different. Okay, so this is now you know, the next level. You know, what's the next smallest thing here? You know, would be things like things that are more like wrinkles and stuff, right? So obviously I don't have, you know, if I dump the tool, you know, I obviously don't have the polygons here to, you know, to be putting wrinkles in here. Okay, so that means another level of detail. Okay, so that means either, you know, I'm gonna make another copy, or you know, I'm gonna make another copy, or either you're gonna smooth again, or you're gonna be happy with what you have here. So I'm gonna make a dupe, Control D on the keyboard. Okay, edit mesh, smooth just once. That's gonna quadruple everything. So now I have, you know, I've got this where I started. I've got this where I put in the medium, you know, medium frequency detail. You know, low frequency meaning overall changes that I made to the shape here. Sort of medium there, and then we're getting higher as we go here. So, you know, that just means what's the frequency of polygons per, you know, piece of the bag. You know, here it's really low. There's only a few. Here it's kind of medium because we've got more. Here we're really starting to get a bunch more, you know, and the difference is this is now 3,000 faces, which isn't too bad, and that was, we started out with 182, you know. So if I you know, pop back into my sculpting tool again, and now I can start using smaller brushes. If I go back here, in fact, let me show you what I mean. So if I go back here and I say, okay, I'm gonna start putting little stress points in, so that means I want a smaller brush. Okay, you know, as you might imagine, yeah, I don't have the detail, you know, let me turn the wireframe on. I don't have the detail to do that because it's just, you know, there's a point here, there's a point there, and yada, yada, yada. So, you know, any changes I make that's supposed to look like that don't work because I can't use a small brush. All I can use is bigger brushes to, you know, put things into place, which is fine. So you know, you add detail and you make it available so that you can paint it. So I'm going to get my sculpt tool out again, and like I said, now I have more stuff to deal with, so I can use a smaller brush. Okay, so, you know, if I wanted to sort of, it's still too high. What? Yeah, see, this really isn't even enough yet either, so I can still be making some changes, but now you see I can make lumpy sort of changes if I wanted to. I'm going to pop down to here, like make some smaller changes. So to do something like wrinkles, I'm going to need actually another division level, so I'm just going to do some changes at this level. Yeah, no, that sucks. Hold on. I'm gonna crease this up like so. Maybe crease this up like so. Okay. There. So these are sort of the, you know, bigger wrinkles, you know, lower frequency creases and stuff like that. Let me change. Oops, wrong way. I'm gonna smooth that out at the end so that it just sort of dies out. So it goes like this. Control. Oops, sorry. Shift on the keyboard. Shift is smooth. Is the alternate tool of this one of Sculpt. And that's how you can get away with not having one of these pens, is because you can just go back and, you know, lightly smooth things down, and, you know, it still looks pretty decent. I'll go up there, there. Oops, crap. So I'm doing Alt to push in versus pull, just to kind of get my gathering going up at the top here. All right. Oops. Shift to smooth because I messed something up there. And push that, push that. Okay. I'm going to shift this out of there too. That looks like crap. So I'm going to smooth that down. Okay. Now I'm going to quit the tool, exit sculpting, Control D to make another copy. At this point, you know, you might not want to be making this many copies, but, you know, whatever. Like, it shows the progression. And I'm going to do another smooth. Just so now I'm at almost 12,000 faces. So, you know, now I've got quite a bit of detail going on. So, but I've got more, you know, more points down here to work with to do all kinds of, you know, higher frequency stuff. So I could make sort of like, for instance, I could make my seams a bit better. Like I could sculpt with a reasonably small tool at this point, like this. Oops. See what I mean about the strength? It's just like I'm at 0.1, like it's kind of ridiculous, but so you could sculpt all those guys down like so, you know, and I could do bigger, you know, like the things that make it gather at the corners, like that. Okay. Let me smooth that down at the end. Put in a really big one. Sort of feathers out. Smooth it down. Boom. Feather out. Yeah, smooth is the shift smooth thing is definitely a lifesaver. You know, if you don't, like I said, if you don't have one of these a Wacom thing. So there's that. Okay. And, you know, there's a real art form to knowing, you know, where to put these kind of creases and stuff. And, you know, that's, you know, the best way to do that is just look for some examples, you know, and out there of real life and how, you know, things gather and all that good stuff. But I'm just gonna BS it into place and hope that it looks okay. So there we go. So that's not bad. I mean, you can, you know, so if you look at the progression that we have here, you know, we started out with this box, this really, you know, this simple box. You know, we added medium frequency detail, you know, bashed into place, put a big bulge here, sort of push these in there, you know, then moved on to some, you know, some medium range stuff. And then down here, you know, we've got actual gathering and creasing and all the sort of natural things that happen, you know. So, you know, a simple object, a simple organic object, when you really look at it, there's lots of stuff happening that, you know, you have to figure out how to get it in, you know, how to do it. And you know, if I just went in there and I said, okay, I'm going to give myself whatever it is here, 12,000 polygons and start trying to push stuff into place, you know, you can do that, but it's just, it's smarter to start simple and work your way out, which is like the point for, you know, literally every object you make. Start at your simplest level so that you're moving the least amount of stuff to get to a rough shape, you know. So here, you know, obviously, you know, I'm moving just a handful of points to, I mean, in fact, we had a simpler one, remember that before I even divided this one down, that was you know, I don't know, 20 polygons or something. So making this curve or making these and deciding on how much I wanted it to flare out and all that stuff was really easy. Whereas if I got down here and I wanted to, you know, make those kind of changes, it's kind of a big deal, you know. So we had another level that was back over here before this one was even subdivided. So it was even simpler before I started putting in edge loops and stuff like that, okay? So now I could just take this and I could do a normal, you know, because it has no interior, and I could grab my, can never remember what these icons mean. Okay, I could grab my extrude, you know, do a light Z translation extrude. That's still too much. 0.05. It's leather. We'll say it's leather, so I'm going to keep it like kind of thick like that, and just hop off the tool. And now I have an interior and an exterior, and it's not bad. You know, it's pretty good. So. Okay, so the one last trick I want to show you about this stuff is, you know, by default, Maya has a virtual lighting setup. Most 3D programs, no, I think they all do, have what they call just a basic default lighting setup, meaning, you know, your object shows up as shaded, okay? If you mash this button right there, it will turn those default lights off, right? And obviously all your objects go black, you know, so you know, when objects are created, you know, there's a very basic surface put on all of them, whether you know it or not. That, you know, that's why when we go through our attribute editor here, that's this first one down here, this Lambert. That's a shading model, right? And that's you know, you can actually mess with these. You can you know, Lambert's just a very, very basic shading model. You can actually just tweak it there. So every object by default, it has to have it for you to see it on the screen. It has to have a shader. So it puts Lambert on there, and, you know, great. You know, so there it is. Okay. The other thing it does is it has, like I said, a virtual set of lights in the scene so that you can see stuff. Otherwise, you'd have objects with no surface and you'd have no lights in the scene. Okay. Now the problem with this is that, you know, they're very flat and they're very they're kind of all over the place, right? So, you know, depending on how you like to sort of sculpt and things like that, you may be looking for a different light setup, you know. And this one is really it sort of doesn't show you everything that's going on necessarily very well, right? So it's a good practice when doing something like this is to change that, okay? So I'm going to turn my light setup off, and I'm going to go into create, and I'm going to put a point light in, okay? And a point light is essentially, think of it just basically as a light bulb, but it actually goes in every direction. So you'll get this little object right here, okay? And, you know, we'll get more into these obviously down the road, but you know, they allow you to put your light wherever you'd like to put it, you know. So, you know, if you're, you know, in this situation where you're trying to decide if the extrusions and the painting and the sculpting that I'm doing is actually, hold on one second, doing anything, you know, like being flat doesn't really tell you the whole story, okay? But if I have a light here, you know, I can tell that, like, this is pretty shitty in here, and this, you know, feathered out okay. You know, some of this worked and some of this didn't, you know, whereas when you have that flat lighting, like, see this, like, you know, that's not terrific, so you could clean that up and everything. So
I can turn on point light again.
You go and you create it. It's its own object type. Create lights. So there's a bunch of different types. Ambient is light that's everywhere. You're better off keeping that off. It's off by default. There's spotlights, point lights, area lights. We'll get more into these, but a point light is just a nice, like I said, it goes everywhere. It's like a light bulb that goes in 360 degrees instead of just, you know, most of it or whatever. So if you took and you created a couple of these, maybe put one over here. Okay, maybe even bring it down a little bit. So now you see the difference is, you know, I'm exposing, you know, different parts of the object, or not sort of different parts, but just, you know, I have control over how the thing is shaded versus when this is on. So here's the difference. So it's very flat. You're not really catching where creases are really happening and where fades aren't happening properly. It's like it's overlit, right? But with my other lights on, I start to see different things that I'm not seeing out of just the normal default lighting setup. And the beauty is you have control over them too. So it's like I said, if you're trying to figure out if this face is working out, this side is working out, you can just take one of your own lights and, you know, put it where you need to make sure that it's being shaded properly. See, like that, you can tell everything. It's like if you were sculpting something and, you know, and you took your light bulb that you had near you or something, or your lamp, and you moved it over so that you could really see the contours and you could see what's happening, you know. So you could bop backwards too and not you know, just click that off and you go back to your default shading, you know. So yeah, yeah, that's a lot of it, you know. That, like I said, I mean, you can play with a lot of these other tools. They, you know, the bulk of them that you'll really use are, you know, your sculpt and using its alternates with smoothing, pushing in and out. That's your shift and your control on your keyboard. You know, the grab, I think, is very useful. Sometimes the knife tool that does those, I mean, in fact, like this might have been a decent place for the knife tool, like, whoo, or not. Now, you see, this is the problem you run into if you have a three-dimensional object. Like, I already extruded this inside, so when it goes to push those faces in there, you see I'm crashing into my inside polygon. So that's why you work in 2 dimensions. Or, you know what I mean, like a non-extruded object by default. So if I went back here, whoops, I'm going to actually, let's see, so I'm trying to pull that out. I'm going to turn that down, strength 5. So I'm doing the alternate, so a knife tool cuts in, but I'm actually going to alternate it with my, my control on my keyboard, so that I'm pulling out. So I'm trying to make like sort of even sharper creases in through here along my seams. Okay, that's maybe too. Come on, asshole. There we go. Okay, that's still too little. We'll say 2. Oh no, 2. Alt. So. You know, so this is it like, once again, it's basically like a sculpt tool, but it's with a really sharp edge. You know, it's like if you just picked up a different tool and on your sculpting. You know, so that's, you know, that's how you know, the best way to use it here in Maya is in those kind of situations. You know, when you get too many polygons going around and everything, it'll first of all, it bogs down. This isn't what Maya's really made to do, so it's sort of bolted on there. Whereas if you go to any of these other programs, ZBrush or Mudbox, it'll actually whip this stuff around a lot faster because that's all it's designed to do. You know, this is a good example. Any of these organic things, you know, you think of a tube of toothpaste, you know, that it's like that's been used at all, right? It'd be real easy to make a tube of toothpaste that's absolutely perfect, of course, but it's like if you really wanted it to look real, you know, that's smushed and halfway used, this is a perfect example of when you would use that. You'd start adding detail to kind of make the end more squished and the other end, or the end more squished and the front still have stuff in it, and you add another level of detail to, you know, push this and that around, you know, and before you know it, you'd have something that is really, you know, is really more organic and more realistic. You know, it's the little tiny details like that really make something. You know, if I said make a bag and you know, you said, okay, great, here's your bag. Obviously, that's not what you're going for. Where, you know, but the difference when you zoom out between, you know, bag number 1 and bag number 1, 2, 6 or whatever, you know, seems small until you get down there, and it looks pretty decent. It's got the smushes, it's got the stuff in it, obviously, it's got creases along the leather, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So that's, you know, that's where it's good. Now, you know, is there more to this? Like, you know, could you put more in? You know, are there little pores in the leather and everything? Yeah, but this is not something that you're going to sculpt. That's something that, you know, you'll do at render time, and we'll get into that. later, like there's a point where you stop. You don't model the pores on a person's face. You don't model the pores in leather or whatever. Like I said, there's a point where you stop with that kind of stuff, and you offload that part of making something look right to the renderer. And like I said, we will get into that, but. So it's pretty fun, and it's useful if you use it. If you don't push it out of its sort of comfort zone, you don't say, "Give me a 5 million point circle, and I'm gonna make a face out of it." It's just like I'm gonna make a perfect face out of it. It's just not. It's not Maya's bag, And just one other quick thing is that if you do want to, start with a good primitive from a circle, don't forget about the platonic solid, which is that circle that we talked about this last week, where so this guy that if you dump up the subdivisions, it doesn't have poles. Remember, it's a circle that doesn't have poles, so obviously this would be a lot easier to sculpt because it doesn't have a point, that crazy point, right up at the top that it's going to become a problem real fast. You see this, you can do anything you like on that because it's the same density all the way around. So you can keep dumping that density up or bumping that density up and doing whatever you like with it. I think I have a weird fall off. Yeah, I do. There we go. So yeah, so they're cool. So if you go into your content browser and you can get wait, where's the people? Clothing? Bipeds. You can get a decent looking basic head to start sculpting with and kicking it around. Once again, it's not nearly dense enough. Well, I mean, you could start bashing it into shape at this level. If like you could start making the big changes to it. This is the perfect example of when you want to turn on symmetry, which you can get at right in the right click menu when you're in sculpting. So I'm going to do Object X. So that'll give me, see how I get two dots here, just like when I was in ZBrush there. Really, I've got symmetry on, and I'm gonna turn up my strength a lot more, and whoa, too much more. See that, but at this level, this is where grab is really more more suited for this kind of stuff, because you're just trying to, like, if you looked at this, like, like the back of the head's like too small for starters, and you'd want to get a big brush to pull that out. Ooh, it's snapping. Do I have snap? Yeah, I have snapping. There we go. So you see what I'm saying? Like I'm making sort of global changes. Whoa, global. Really bad global changes. It's like Mars Attacks, guys. Anyway, so this level is where you do that kind of stuff. Like if you're looking for a stronger chin, this has got a really weak chin. You pull that stuff out. You'd make those big broad changes at this level. Squish that in, put the eyes where they should be. All that kind of stuff. Then make a copy, subdivide it, and then sculpt that one. Make another copy and subdivide it, et cetera, et cetera. So, anybody have any question on these guys, on this tool? Yeah. Nope. All right. Well, that's pretty much all I got to say about that. I have an assignment that I haven't written up, so keep your eye out for it. It'll be due next Monday. I don't think it's a tough one, but I haven't written it up yet because I'm not feeling so hot. But I'll get it there within the next. I'll have it up tonight. Let's put it that way. And but that's.